the one thing that I took away from being boots on the ground this year and talking to a lot of different people was there was no consistency in the answers.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a teaching tutorial Thursday. Love the wisdom coming at you today from Lindsay Rhodes. You guys remember her from NFL Network. Does a fantastic job. Strong opinions as it relates to the pre-draft process. By the way, there's a lot of news to get to later. A lot of O-line news. We have a pay cut on a Buffalo Bills player, a legend for the Eagles retiring. You can check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. Check us out at Ross Tucker Pod. There's a lot to get to, though. So let's dive into it first, though, with Lindsay Rhodes and The Big Show.
The Big Show.
I know I've been on her show before, but this might be the first time I've had her on my show. I think everybody remembers you for all the years at NFL Network. Now you got a really cool gig I want to get into with SumerSports. Lindsay Rhodes, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course.
For the first time.
Yes. So check her out on social media, by the way, at Lindsay_Rhodes. So before we get into some of the other stuff like NFL Network days, update for the people that might have lost track with you.
Yeah.
I'm guessing most of them follow you on social media, but just kind of what you are doing with SumerSports.
So SumerSports is I'm hosting a podcast and doing some work with them from a media standpoint, helping them to kind of push their product in a direction where people like me can understand it.
Yes.
I think, right?
Yeah.
Because that's sort of the biggest hang up, I think, with the analytics and some of this deep data that, I mean, there's so much really interesting information coming down the pike, but it's hard to understand for a lot of people. So it's hard to message. It's hard to message why this is important. And I think that's why you end up having this whole like, shut up nerds type of dynamic that goes on in social media. But I have always been really, really interested in getting to the bottom just from a journalistic standpoint at the beginning of my career, which was more journalistically based, in terms of finding out what questions haven't been answered yet. Like, what information do we not know? And then there's an inherent next layer there that is what we think we know actually true? And I think that that's really driven a lot of my content and question asking, my general curiosity about football over the years. Like, so this guy has always been good, but is he still, or are we just saying he's still good because we're so used to saying he's good? It's like the whole Pro Bowl conversation, right? And how people get it clearly voted into the Pro Bowl because they're popular. They're popular usually because they were good at some point, but are they still the best at their position? And so Sumer has some really great scouting and data tools that can let you kind of, look under the hood and see who actually is popping in ways that maybe might surprise you, and then vice versa.
So it's funny because I did some scouting and data on your social media, and a couple things jump out to me. Mm-hmm. First of all, you're 1,000% right. People get better, players get better, players get worse.
Yeah.
And we lose sight of that. Mm-hmm. What I've always found, I played for 5 teams, right? They want to put you into a box as 100%. Soon as they can. And for me, I was the swing inside guy, right? Like you don't want him to start for you, but he can be your 6-man center guard. But then I always think, I actually think if I had been in the right system as a center, I think I could have started, right? So that stuff happens all the time. So I love that you guys are actually trying to do the work. Mm-hmm. The other thing, you had multiple things, Lindsay, on your social feed that I loved. It's like you were preaching the choir. One of which is that, and it's getting worse every year, highlight video society.
Oh, yeah.
Where we have confused someone doing one thing exceptionally as
being exceptional.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's funny because I have a show called the College Draft Podcast with Emory Hunt, and he was joking in January and February about how Jackson Dart had this really good throw in the bowl game against whoever they played in December, a non-playoff bowl game, and people just show the incredible one-time play
Yep.
over and over and over again, and look what he can do. Look how good he is. Whereas the reality is, we don't have any plays of Brady like that. What made Brady so great
true.
is
Right.
he did the right thing at the right time over and over and over again.
And you're saying that subtle movement in the pocket isn't a sexy highlight play?
Right.
Like, yeah, but you're so right. And I think people have learned it in the last few years in like the fantasy space because we've been fooled. People during training camp, there are always these clips of somebody making some sexy like one-handed grab on the sideline and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm going to draft them." And then it just doesn't go anywhere. And so I think people who are paying attention to the patterns are like, okay, maybe we shouldn't do that. But then it still comes up in Senior Bowl. And I saw that a lot last week. And it was an interesting experience having gone to Senior Bowl before with NFL Network and then spending a lot of time where I was in studio at NFL Network and then more recently just observing in other ways. You're like catching you're following on social media for the reports, like who's having a good day today. The one thing that I took away from being boots on the ground this year and talking to a lot of different people was there was no consistency in the answers. Some people thought that this guy had the best day, and other people literally said, I thought his day was terrible. And so you're like, what to make of it, right? And that's not even that's the next layer to the highlight play. That's even just opinions that are coming out about good versus bad. And what is good versus bad? Is it a high-end wow play every once in a while, or is it consistency? And clearly there are pros and cons to both. Like sometimes you want a guy who can just, mess someone up. But like Mike Green was a perfect example.
Yes.
That one clip on Josh Connerly makes Josh Connerly look terrible. At the end of the week, his teammates vote for him as the best player at practice of the week on the offensive line. So clearly he didn't have a bad week, but
sometimes
that one clip
they
made him
get
look terrible.
Sometimes you get your butt run over.
And from a Mike Green standpoint, he kicked his ass and then turned around and, would like lose 3 reps in a row. Like it's like but you're not seeing that. You're not seeing what followed up that crazy play. How consistent was this? And so I think that that's a really interesting, scouting or evaluation note.
And I think it's getting worse with every passing year because of social media.
For sure.
Because of what gets posted,
Yeah.
what gets engagement. That's what people notice. Like as you're talking, I get like 5 more questions in my head the whole time. I could even go on a whole tangent about just one-on-ones in general. That's not what the game's like.
Yeah.
Now I have a bias, Lindsay, because I was bad at one-on-ones, right? I have short arms, and so I never did well. Also, you'll appreciate this as someone that's been behind the camera and stuff. When I was doing a one-on-one, okay, in practice, I would be like, okay, got to take a quick set, inside hand, try to get there. Like, I'd go over all the technique in my head, right? In a game, you don't have time for that.
No.
In a game, it just
find a way.
In a game, you're looking at the linebackers and you're looking at where they might be bringing pressure from. By the time the ball snapped, then you're looking at your guy. You just have to react.
Yeah.
So I think one-on-ones are like some of the most overrated things that we talk about. Yet at the Senior Bowl and even in practice, I never started a season opener. And I am convinced is because I was so bad in one-on-ones that the teams they couldn't bear themselves to have a guy that looked that bad in one-on-one starting.
That's interesting, though. I bet you there is some truth to that.
There was at least 3 years where at some point during the year, the guy got hurt or was playing bad. They put me in. I never came out. 3 years in a row, once they put me in, I didn't come out. But then in the offseason, they would maybe sign a guy because they still just weren't. Like, it's like they have a bias against guys that are not good in one-on-ones. But the game not like that. I will say this: it's really impressive as an offensive lineman if you can win a lot of one-on-one pass pro because
you're not designed to win it.
Right.
Yes.
So, however, I know plenty of guys that were awesome at that, but then it was the other stuff. Like if you just told them before every play, just block that guy, they would have been fine. That's not football. Like football is like all these guys moving around at one time, and it's actually very hard. Like there are guys that could do the physical part of it. It's the mental part that they struggled with. So I also saw that on your feed. I think you might have reposted it from Brett Coleman or someone like that. Like you might have reposted it. But again, another example that you had that I loved, whether it's one-on-ones or whether it's highlight videos, realizing that is not what the games are like, and we overweight those during any evaluation process.
Well, one of the things that I thought was interesting about Senior Bowl week, in terms of like what teams are looking for, that someone said, I talked to a former general manager who told me that, everyone gets the tape afterwards. So you can go back and you can look at the football stuff that you're looking for, but like on the ground, he said, we're looking for some of the intangible stuff that you can't glean without being on the ground.
Yeah.
And I know some people roll their eyes at intangibles and like, as it sounds like,
Yeah.
what does that even mean? But specifically, they're saying, so like an offensive lineman, for instance, offensive line at the Senior Bowl is such an interesting environment because you've got a guy who's played tackle his whole career, and now people have looked at his body and they're like, you're a guard. Or maybe even you're a center, and this isn't a position that you played with any regularity in college, and so you're getting like reps at positions that you don't have that much experience at, and you're going up against people that are playing their normal position, and also, by the way, they're the best in the country, right, because they're here. So I think being able to watch the players and say, okay, was this his first rep here? How many reps have we taken here? How much experience does he have? He got a coaching note in between reps. Did he implement that coaching note quickly? How quickly can he adapt? How quickly can he take coaching and turn that into production? What is he like with his teammates? And not just in like are you a good guy and do they like you sort of way, but are you, if you're a center, can you take control of the huddle? Are you the alpha of the group? Are you like, do you have the personality type that this is like who they want to be in charge of their offensive line in that way? I think that there are a lot of things that you can take away from those types of environments that are very subjective. So it's going to vary from team to team, but that are value added in those environments.
And I would argue when they switch a guy's position for that week, that should only help him if he does well. I don't think it should hurt him if he does poorly. But for the guys that do well, like Gray Zabel, North Dakota State, right? He's a left tackle. I don't go to the Senior Bowl. I don't watch it. I really just have people that I trust, that I reach out to, or I read. I read some of their stuff. Like I think Dane Brugler does a great job, right? And so Gray Zabel, by all accounts, was fantastic at center and guard, even though he only played left tackle at North Dakota State. So that, to me, is super impressive, right?
100%.
And I have a bias towards FCS guys or whatever, like smaller guys. But it did seem like this year there was a lot of smaller school guys that did well. And it makes me think, like, okay, what other smaller school guys might be out there that didn't get invited that could also have done well?
Well, so we've been talking about that specific note amongst ourselves because it feels so outliery now. Everyone's transferring up. As soon as you have success, then people identify you. They pluck you out of the small school and they put you in a big school. And, sometimes there's money attached to it for NIL. I think it's fascinating that we're seeing so many offensive linemen in this year's draft that are good enough to be popping in a Senior Bowl environment who are small school guys. Like you've got Jackson Slater at Sacramento State, who's another one. There's another guy from Jacksonville State whose name is escaping me.
There's a Lampkin kid.
Lampkin from North Carolina. These are guys who consensus, and not just from everybody else, but like a Brandon Thorne, whose opinion I value very much about O-line play. These are guys who they said had good weeks. And I just think it's interesting. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about, I think it might have to do with maybe O-line coaching. And if you have a good O-line, North Dakota State clearly has a history of turning out good offensive linemen. So maybe there is less need to go somewhere else to transfer up. But I wonder why the offensive linemen are staying at the small schools and we're not seeing that at other positions.
Floored by that because I know what some of those guys get offered. And I got to be honest with you, Lindsay, like some of these offers, like if someone gave me $2 million to go back to college, I'd have to explain to my wife, and it would be tough. I'd be like, honey, I'm going to Tennessee for a year. You know what I mean? Like
that eligibility.
Yeah. Like I don't know what to say to the girls, my daughters, or whatever. Like I know this sounds weird about daddy's going back to college, but like
this is a good buddy movie with someone who is a grown man who has eligibility left and goes back now because of this at a frat party. All of the things.
All right. So, question for you: you're doing media stuff for SumerSports.
Yeah.
So I thought SumerSports was primarily getting NFL teams and FBS teams to subscribe, to use the service.
Services. Mm-hmm.
So why does SumerSports need a media arm? I'm sure you've been asked this before.
So, actually, I haven't.
Oh.
So let's work through my answer here in terms of yes. No, I think there's definitely.
Is there a consumer product or no?
Yes, there's a consumer product. There will be more consumer products to come. And so there is, as of right now, like the first arm that's just consumer is the website, which has a lot of the advanced data that I like to tell people to go to the website to check it out, because a lot of these advanced numbers that we throw around conversationally, we're getting on sites that are behind paywalls. So a lot of casual fans don't have access to like yards per route run, which is, by the way, a very sticky and predictive stat for wide receivers. Check that one out. And so there is some data that's free on the site. There's going to be more offerings to fans and maybe media outlets in terms of things that are available to them. But we are working on one thing that's going to be that we're going to be opening up in terms of beta testing in the near future, which is called SumerBrain, which is kind of like Google, but specifically for football, where you can plug in a lot of these questions about football that if you plugged it into like Google, you would get wrong results because it's just looking through articles. So this will scour our data and be able to give you quick prompt answers. And so, by the way, if anyone's listening that wants to sign up for that, you can go to SumerSports.com and sign up to be on the wait list or be a part of that beta testing process.
Awesome. It's funny too. I said this, I guess I got awful announcing, gave me credit for this, and I got a lot of praise during the Patriots-Chargers game in Week 17. I actually did the game for NFL Network. Chargers went for a fourth down, right? And I think Chris Rose might have said something about the analytics. And my frustration with the analytics community, or not the community, but the analytics conversation is, it's really just probability.
I'm so glad you said that.
The word should be probability, not analytics.
Yes.
And by the way, since the sport of football started, coaches have reviewed tape.
Yes.
And they review tape to get an idea as to the probability that the opponent will run certain plays out of certain formations or in certain situations. The analytics is just the probability of success or failure based on what you choose to do in certain situations.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable to me that we've done, it's been years now.
It's been bad branding is what it is.
And we've still done this bad of a job of saying, listen, it doesn't mean you should always do it. Just here's the probability. If you go for it on 4th and 5, here, there's a 65% chance that this happens. If you don't, because it was there's only 20 seconds left. And I said, well, there's a better chance that the Chargers in the next 25 seconds are going to score points than the Patriots if they go for it. So I think they should go for it, and that's all they're doing. That's all of the analytics community is trying to do, is try to figure out as best as they can what the probability is for all of the given decisions that are being made in the game.
100%. And I've long said, if you replace the word analytics with probability, would people freak out? Because now it doesn't sound like it's a subset of nerds that have come up with some newfangled thing. It's not even that at all. It's literally just, here's some data. Now you obviously put some prism of context around it. And that's true for everything. And a lot of the things that that we're working on at Sumer, we have an AI that they have managed to teach a computer model. They've plugged in like hundreds of thousands of football plays, right? So they've trained to themselves in the probabilities of what's likely to happen when this happens. And then they have the ability to, with tracking data, kind of create probabilities on a frame-by-frame basis for every single play. And so it's rad. I mean, you see the dots that are out there. This is dots married to video, married to like frame-by-frame probability and expected yards. And so again, that isn't always going to go back to like the 4th and 5 conversation about Josh Allen that freaked everybody out after the AFC Championship game. You could go back and you could look at that and you could say, okay, was there a point in time where Khalil Shakir was the guy that he should have gone to, or was it Dalton Kincaid? I went back and looked at it, and when the ball left his hands, Khalil Shakir had like a 65% completion probability, and Dalton Kincaid's was like 35%. Then the expected yards at that moment, Khalil Shakir was 5, and the expected yards for Dalton Kincaid was like 10 point something. So then you still have to use some judgment because you needed 5 yards. It was 4th and 5. So you're factoring in a higher completion probability with exactly the yards that we're expecting, but that doesn't mean he's going to get there. And there's also a 35+% probability that he doesn't catch it, factoring in with a lower completion probability, but more yards.
Right.
And so there's lots of context needed with everything. But it's fascinating to me that we have so many different ways to find the information that can help push us in this direction, and where a Josh Allen can look back at a tape like that and it trains quarterbacks, usually younger quarterbacks. Like, think about the VR that Jaden Daniels is doing. If you use this type of model in your meeting on Monday or Tuesday when you go look at film, and you can show somebody, if you let the ball go here and if you had gone here, look at the difference in probability based on where you went here. And if you see that over a long period of time, maybe you can train the athlete to know where their weakness or their blind spot is. I just think there's so much fascinating stuff out there right now that can be utilized for like up and down the football spectrum.
Check her out on social media at Lindsay_Rhodes. She's doing a bunch of stuff for SumerSports. You can follow them at SumerSports as well. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Lindsay. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Ross.
Tuck's Takes.
March Madness NCAA tournament is here. One of the best times of the year to get a delicious Smirnoff. Maybe if you're skiing all day, like I'm going to be this weekend, you have some Pedialyte or Gatorade Zero. Tastes delicious with your vodka. And then you're hydrating while you're getting a little vodka in there. They're also sponsoring this show. They're sponsoring the draft. They're sponsoring everything because Smirnoff's awesome and it's affordable, which I really appreciate. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age.
All right, Ross, arguably the biggest news is Eagles legend Brandon Graham. He does announce his retirement after 15 years, all with Philly.
You know, I don't know if that's the case, that it's the biggest news, Jack. I think, you know, for me doing Eagles games in the preseason and you being from Philadelphia, probably the biggest news for us. I don't know if it is for people that are in other cities. I'll just say this, 15 years is unbelievable. I mean, he sets the record for the NFL for the Eagles for the most games played, for the most years played for the Eagles, and he wins 2 Super Bowls. And then the second one, he comes back from a torn tricep and tears it again. And in the first one, he had the game-clinching strip sack of Tom Brady. I mean, he's not a Hall of Fame player, but he's a legend in Philadelphia forever.
Well, you're wearing the Labatt hat, so we'll talk about Buffalo. Bills linebacker Matt Milano, he did take a $3 million pay cut.
Yeah, so this hat is sweet, and I love it. And that tells you how bad my hair is. It also tells you, I just want to point this out. I'm a huge Matt Milano guy, and I have no issue with the Bills, or any team for that matter, asking a player to take a pay cut. He's been hurt a lot. He's missed a lot of games. he has the ability to earn it back. Just remember this when players hold out, okay? He is being asked to take a pay cut because he's not performing to that level of his contract. Just remember that when guys ask to get a restructured contract or to redo their deal. Absolutely love watching college hoops once the tournament starts, and you guys can drink some Labatt Blue Lights like I'll be drinking, and you can get cool gear. It's called Buy Beer, Get Gear. Go to rewards.labattusa.com to sign up. You get points for every purchase at any store, bar, or stadium, any size, any product, anywhere you're buying Labatt. Just upload it instantly. They'll be getting points on the court. You get points off the court. Rewards.labattusa.com.
There is a lot of transactions around the league. That includes the Patriots signing center Garrett Bradbury to a 2-year deal. The Chargers, they inked former Raiders center Andre James to a deal. Texans, they signed Cam Robinson. The Jags bring in Fred Johnson.
Well, so that's what's so interesting, right, is we're week 2 of free agency. Bradbury's going to start at center for the Patriots. Andre James might start at center for the Chargers. Cam Robinson's going to be the left tackle for the Texans. I mean, so you've got very important positions still being decided right now with these guys and these signings in a bunch of different spots. There's other signings too, Jack. I don't know that it's – the other ones are not as important. The Chiefs re-signing Kareem Hunt and Juju Smith-Schuster. Bears getting Zacchaeus at receiver. Packers signed McCole Hardman. Vikings signed Jeff Okudah. Probably the most interesting one is we have a restricted free agent offer sheet signed by the Raiders for linebacker Christian Ellis. My guess is the Patriots will match it, but only time will tell. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. You guys know how I feel about it. By the way, multiple people that ordered stories for Valentine's Day, myfrontpagestory.com. I sent out your signed press pass or picture, whatever, last week. So kudos to you guys at myfrontpagestory.com. Backofficescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.